Rainbows Are Circles, Episode 13. Today, we're talking about magic, casting spells, and what it means to be a witch in today's day and age. Welcome to Rainbows Are Circles, a podcast exploring human potential and everyday wonder. What possibilities open up for us when we explore life with optimism, curiosity, and an open mind? Join me, Julie Malari, as we wake up to wonder and speak with inspirational guests on the topics of personal development, alternative health, and even magical, mystical, yet often misunderstood practices. Are you ready? Hi everyone, and welcome back to Rainbows Are Circles. I'm super excited about this episode because we're talking about witches, which is a topic that I've been wanting to learn about for a really long time. And I think my current concept of a witch is pretty incomplete and probably pretty misconstrued based on what I've seen in movies, on cartoons, what I've read in history books. So I'm excited to have a guest on the show who is a real practicing witch, and she's going to be helping us to clarify what it means to be a witch. We have Casey Zabala as our guest today. And Casey is an incredible woman. She's an artist, a tarot reader, an intuitive mystic, and the founder of Modern Witches Confluence, an annual gathering for witches and the witch curious in San Francisco. Casey even created her own tarot deck, which she illustrated and wrote herself, called The Wanderer's Tarot. Now, if tarot cards are something that you're interested in learning about, I have a separate mini episode with Casey specifically on this topic, which you can find if you are a patron of the show. To become a patron of the show, you can visit patreon.com/rainbowsarecircles. You will get some exclusive content, including some guided visualizations and meditations, as well as some bonus episodes like the one we'll be doing with Casey on tarot cards. In this episode, we're going to learn what is a witch, and we'll dive into the history of witches. What is magic, and can anyone learn magic? What are spells, and how do they work? At the end of the episode, Casey's going to guide us through a really beautiful grounding meditation, which I think you're going to love. So without further ado, let's welcome Casey Zabala to the show. So welcome, Casey. Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, it's great to be with you today and just chatting about all these things that I care so much about.
So let's start just by understanding a little bit about you and your story and how you came to be a witch.
Sure. I always knew that I was a witch growing up. It was sort of one of those things that just seemed really right to me. I would make potions and things as a child and just spent a lot of time out in nature growing up, which I think really affected my understanding of what being a witch is, and just really feeling connected with the spirits of the earth and the unseen energies that were around me. I was given, I think it became a little bit more crystallized for me when I was gifted a tarot deck for my 13th birthday. And I remember doing a reading with my mother and her friend and for myself. And it was just so amazing to me how the cards could really speak to parts of myself that I'd never really expressed before. So it was this really magical kind of awakening to tarot as a tool, but also to really how those unseen energies and spirits were really real and could be kind of communicated in this way.
How did you know that you were a witch when you were younger? How was that defined for you?
I'm not totally sure, because I have a distinct memory of telling my friends that, we're witches. This is what witches do, when we were kind of, mixing up leaves and mud together and saying things and doing a spell, I suppose. And I think growing up, then there was, Buffy the Vampire Slayer and The Craft and Practical Magic and all these movies that shaped my conception of like what witches were in a pop culture sense. I was always really drawn to those things. And it was kind of an innate feeling of like, this is what I am. And also a witnessing of all these different types of witches out there and figuring out who I was as a witch. And I would learn later that, my mother also had kind of these intuitive abilities that she worked with, but also sort of suppressed as well. So it's been a journey for sure. But there was this very deep just knowing that I had when I was really young.
When you were mixing leaves and mixing potions, did you know what you were doing, or had you seen this done before, or was it just something you kind of did on your own?
It was just something that I did on my own. Just thought it was fun to like play with like nature spirits, basically. I think when we're children, we're very much more awake to things that, intuitive things and unseen energies. And it's sort of like trained out of us in school or in family situations. But I think children are much more highly sensitive. And we're just able to kind of dive in and have no judgment around what it is we're doing.
Yeah. When you say nature spirits, did you feel those spirits? Did you know that they were there? What did that look like for you?
Yeah, I guess I've always had a knowing, which is claircognizance, and which is just a sense that you know things to be true, rather than like seeing the spirits or having any visuals around that. It was just kind of a sense that there's something else that's present here, and I know its name, and I can have a conversation with it, and we can communicate in some very like liminal way.
Mm. Did the communication consist of words, or just more like thoughts?
Thoughts, I would say. Yeah. Mostly it's just all kind of like things just seem to be coming through your head as if they're thoughts, but you know that they're not your own.
So let's define what a witch is.
It's an interesting thing. It's an interesting question to pose, because I know that there are so many different types of witches out there. So I will give my definition of what I think a witch is. And it's someone who understands that everything is connected and that there are unseen forces at work that are supporting us throughout our journeys as humans. And in that acknowledgement of that interconnection and these unseen forces, there's the ability to kind of work with those energies and create change for yourself, for others, through that kind of co-creation. I think that a witch is someone who is also innately intuitive and is not afraid to utilize their intuitive skills in their relationships and in their everyday life. So that's a big part of it. And I think overall, witches create their own sense of spirituality that governs them. And, that's kind of, I think, part of this wildness archetype that kind of comes with the witch, is that we're not playing into any kind of hierarchy or institution that's giving us a sense of direction or meaning. We're really creating that for ourselves. So it can be a very empowering archetype to inhabit.
Is being a witch associated with any sort of religion?
It depends on what like lineage of witchcraft you are participating in, because there are many. And culturally, there are different like pantheons of gods that say a type of witch might pray to or be devotional to. But overall, there's this sense that witches as a whole, there is a sense that, there are these energies that, you can work with, whether they be gods, goddesses, the energy of the earth itself. So I would say it's more polytheistic in that sense.
Mm. What are some of the practices or tools that witches use?
I can only speak to my own practice, but the tools that I use are very typical of my own lineage and tradition, which is coming from Celtic areas and then also Eastern European practices. So obviously tarot is a big tool for me, which I would say is more of like a modern tool for witches. But I also use things like an athame, which is a ritual knife that's used to direct energy or cut herbs and things like that. Another tool would be kind of a tool, maybe not the right word, but having an altar is really important to my practice. A place where kind of I find my spirit can work its magic and be at home. So it has the representations of the 4 elements on the altar at all times, which would be fire, water, earth, and air. And your altar space is really a place where you're focusing your magic. So whatever it is, whatever spells you have kind of working will be represented on your altar. Any deities that you're working with will be represented on your altar, as well as any kind of energy that just makes you feel like you're in your own magic.
Mm. And how do you define the word magic?
Magic, I would say, is the practice of focusing an intention and using your will to create change in the world. So it's a very active principle. I think that, when we hear the word magic, culturally, we think of Harry Potter and really like outrageous performances of magical things just happening. And really it's a very like focused and quiet and concentrated action of changing things to better your life or to further your personal growth, your development.
Okay. Can you define what a spell is?
Spells are, again, like we're talking about magic and how magic supports our intention and supports us changing and making things happen in the world. So the spell is kind of like the vehicle for your magic. So the spell is the symbolic representation of your intention. So when you have an intention, say for self-love, you can create a spell that evokes this kind of energy of self-love by like taking a ritual bath and maybe surrounding yourself with rose quartz or writing yourself a love letter and burning it and kind of sending it into the universe. So those kind of ritualized actions are the spell.
Do you have to be a witch to use magic or to cast spells?
The word witch is a word that I am personally working on reclaiming for myself as a powerful word, as a word that empowers me. But for a lot of people, it's still very cloaked in trauma, and not everyone who practices magic or is a tarot reader or does spells is necessarily a witch.
Let's talk about why the word witch is cloaked in trauma. Can you talk a bit about the history of witches and why it has a negative connotation for a lot of people today?
Sure. Yeah, I think that that's such a deep subject, but I will try to speak to it as best I can. The history of witches is really kind of woven into this history of colonization and the Industrial Revolution and the rise of capitalism, because during the time of the witch burnings, what was happening was this transition of power away from individual sovereignty to capitalistic modes of power, or the church was taking over a lot of power systems in communities and trying to be the source of stability in those communities. So folks who were midwives or herbalists or people that were just kind of living their own lives and not wanting to give other people responsibility or agency for their lives, those are the people that were really attacked as being witches. It's a very misunderstood energy, witches, because these people weren't necessarily practicing, devil worship or any of those things that the church defined as witchcraft. They were actually just supporting themselves and supporting their families and their communities in ways that were natural to them. And so the type of witch that we see now is in a negative light is actually a conception that was created to vilify certain women, certain people, for living their lives outside of this patriarchal framework. The claims to devil worship were really kind of formulated by the Catholic Church. And what they didn't want people doing was practicing their old ways or praying to the goddess or going out in nature and having religious experiences. What they wanted were for people to go into the church and to pay their tariffs and to bow down to their God. And so the real sense that we get of like devil worshiping witches is really from religion.
Okay. Can you share a story of maybe some of the effects you've seen with casting a spell?
Yeah, the spell work is something that should be taken very seriously, I would say, because you are, in a lot of ways, manipulating energy. And so it's really important to be really precise and clear about what you're calling in, especially making sure that you really, truly desire whatever it is that you're asking for. And I think we see a lot of this kind of reflected in people who talk about manifestation work. Modern manifestation work is very similar to spell work. It just doesn't necessarily have that like symbolic framework all the time. So I know that some people I've spoken to about spellcraft have said, I called in this partner that I really wanted, but it ended up being, almost too much of a relationship for me. And it was too much work. It was not exactly what I had wanted. So it's just really important to be super specific whenever you're doing any type of manifestation work or spell work around exactly what it is that you want, and not asking for too much. So yeah, that's kind of one of the things that I see happening a lot is people ask for a lot all at once. And then it comes and you're just overwhelmed and you don't know how to really manage it.
When you say modern manifestation, are you referring to things like the book The Secret or setting intention?
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of people out there who are doing like manifestation workshops and that type of, it's very much about kind of acknowledging what it is that you truly desire and then calling in what is going to be right for you in the present moment. And I see it being a really powerful tool for a lot of people.
Okay. So if somebody wanted to, let's say, make more money, how could they create a spell around that? And what would that look like?
Yeah, it kind of depends on what kind of work they're doing, I would say. But a really good way to call in more abundance, I would say, is getting really precise about how much abundance you're looking for. So like really writing down like a number would be good. I need $1,000 extra a month or something like that. And having that very specific intention. And I like to use candles a lot for money magic because I think the fire aspect of it is really attractive, right? And it's very fire feeds us with warmth. It gives us that sense that we're fulfilled, we're held. And so it's a good kind of symbolic point to start with. I would choose a green candle because green is a color that's associated with fertility and abundance. And then I would, have my kind of spell wish, my amount written on a piece of paper, maybe putting a pentacle around it or something that's protecting it, maybe a circle around it. And then I'll place the candle on top of that symbolic representation of what I'm desiring and light the candle and spend some time with it, and usually meditating in that space around, what it's going to feel like to have that extra $1,000 a month and what it is I'm going to do with it, how I'm going to maybe support myself better with that extra abundance.
And is that something that you would do every day until it happens, or how long would it take?
Yeah, it depends. It depends on the candle too. Like if you get like a big jar candle, 7-day candle, you could do it every day. Like following up, if you're doing it on the new moon would be a good time to do it because you're calling in this new abundance, and then lighting it every day as the moon is growing is always a good thing, to be energetically supported by the moon. But yeah, you could do it something where I've seen people do candle spells where it's like, okay, I'm just doing it all in one moment. I'm going to sit here until this candle is gone. You wouldn't do that with a 7-day jar candle. But with like a mini candle, you've seen those, I'm sure. And that's really effective too, because you're really concentrating your energy in this way. But drawing it out can also be really potent to kind of like rekindle the flame over a long period of time.
Okay. Yeah. If you use a 7-day candle, you'd be like, I'm not coming to work
I'm not coming to work. I'm working on my spell.
It's really important. I'm going to get an extra $1,000 a month. So you mentioned the moon and, maybe doing it at the beginning of the moon. You also mentioned working with fire and the elements. So it sounds like witches really connect with the energy and the forces of nature.
Yeah, I would say so. It's part of kind of seeing all things as being alive and all things as being connected.
Do you see a lot more people becoming witches now as we're trying to find more connection to the earth and to nature? And I feel like there's a reemergence of people really wanting and craving that connection today.
Yeah, I would say so. I think that, we're living in deeply troubling times, and I think we're each finding ourselves facing a choice whether or not we want to like really engage in the healing of the planet, or if we want to kind of bury our heads in the sand. And I see a lot of people turning to spirituality and witchcraft because it offers a place, offers an opportunity, I guess, for us to re-enchant our relationship with the earth and with the planet. When
we were talking about spells earlier, and you were mentioning the candle and, using maybe a symbolic shape of the pentagon, when you're doing that and afterwards, do you have to do anything after the spell, like as you go throughout your day? Or is it just the act of the spell that's doing the work?
There's this idea that in order for a spell to really work, you have to like really release it into the world. And so I think part of this is about really, you do your spell, you have that concentrated moment, and then you kind of send it out into the universe for it to take root or take shape as it needs to. And a lot of that is just like trusting that your magic is going to work. So it's not necessarily just like walking away and forgetting about it, but it is on some level just walking away and having a sense of faith and trust that whatever needs to happen is going to happen.
Are you also trying to like tune into perhaps opportunities or signs?
Yeah, I would say, you can do a spell for $1,000. And then if you're not like looking for extra ways to find that money in the world and paying attention to the signs as they're coming to you around like, oh, I should also save money. like really, you have to back up your spells with right action, I would say. So being awake to the opportunities as they present themselves is really important.
Yeah, I think they talked about that in The Secret or in some other form of manifestation where you get clear on what you want, you set intention, you release it, but then you also are really paying attention to how that answer is coming back to you or how that spell might be offering you opportunities as you move throughout your day. So you really have to pay attention. You don't just release it and then forget about it. So you're saying that's kind of the same with spells too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very similar. Mm-hmm.
Is there anything that you want people to know about witches and what it means to be a witch?
I guess that I'd like everyone to know that witches are everyday people. They're not necessarily casting spells all day long and lighting candles and not doing any work. They're doctors, they're lawyers, they're people of the world, and you're probably participating and engaging with witches all the time and not knowing about it. So that's something I like to remind people.
Do you want to share a tool with us that we might use in our daily lives?
Sure. Yeah, I'd love to share a little grounding activity with you all. This is a way that you can increase your own connection with the earth that you're living on and inhabiting every day. And so it's a bit of a guided meditation. Be happy to lead you through it. If it feels comfortable, closing your eyes and starting to tune into your breathing, noticing where the air wants to go in your body in this moment. Noticing your bones and how they're setting into your frame. Relaxing your body around those bones. Allowing yourself to tune into how gravity is holding you here in this moment. Keeping you tethered and connected with the earth below. And before we deepen our practice of grounding into the earth, I will acknowledge the Ohlone people whose land I am presently inhabiting. Acknowledging the ancestors of this land and all their magics which have come before mine. And I'll invite each of you, wherever you are in the world, to kind of understand who has been inhabiting and occupying this land for centuries, the indigenous people. And from here in our bodies, I'm going to invite you to imagine yourself as a beautiful tree, any type of tree that comes to you that you feel like you connect with. Your trunk will be your core and your legs, your torso. Your beautiful canopy will be your head, branching outwards and around you. And dropping down, we'll drop the beautiful roots of this tree into the earth. Imagining these roots growing from the bottoms of your feet, growing down through the foundations of any building you're in. These roots drop down and spiral through any obstacles of concrete and stone, down into the soil below. These roots weave around each other, spiraling downward through water, through pockets of clay, until they find a place where they want to anchor and rest. And really feeling how your root system is connecting you with the earth below. I'll invite you to take a deep breath here, breathing in the earth energy through your root system, up into your beautiful trunk. Continuously breathing upward, inviting that earth energy all the way up into your canopy, into your branches and leaves, filling you with nourishment. Imagining this deep earth energy filling you up with a color that feels most nourishing and earth-like to you. You can feel how this earth energy is helping those leaves and buds to grow, filling your core with strength. Once you feel all full and energized with this earth energy, we'll invite you to tune back into your root system, thanking the earth for providing this nourishment, this energy, and sending your own gratitude down into the earth, thanking it for giving you a home. And from here, we can travel back up our root system, winding our way back up through the clay and the stone, winding our way back up through the foundation of the building you're in, back into your body filled with bones and blood. And taking a deep breath, reconnecting with your body in this way, reconnecting with your full self, your full presence. And slowly kind of returning to your physicality. You can rub your hands together if it feels right. And slowly returning to this place. Knowing that you can return to this tree and to the earth connection whenever you need to.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
That was really beautiful. I feel like so much calmer now.
Yeah, right?
Because I always feel like a little bit nervous when I do these, and I just feel a lot more, just grounded.
Yeah.
What does it mean to be grounded?
I think it means that you're acknowledging your body and your body's connection with the earth and with the stars and the sky, and it's kind of placing you in a more centered space. And I think when we're grounded, we're better able to show up for ourselves and for other people and be more present.
Yeah, I can feel that already. I think what I'll do is I'll create that little piece and make it its own little audio segment so that people can listen to it and can do it anytime throughout their day where they feel they need to ground a little bit.
Totally, yeah.
For myself, I feel like I spend a lot of us, we spend a lot of times in our thoughts and in our heads, and we get a little disconnected from our bodies. And I think that was really helpful for just reconnecting and feeling more centered.
Definitely.
Yeah,
we're very much in our minds all the time.
Yeah. Do you feel grounded most of the time, or do you have to practice a lot? Because you seem very grounded.
Thank you. It's definitely a daily practice of mine to do the grounding. And some days I notice that it's easier for me to connect in that way. And some days it's much harder. Just depends on kind of the energetic weather, I suppose, and what's going on in our very busy lives. But I find that, when I am in those really busy, very stressful times, it's the times when I need to connect and do that grounding meditation really deeply, and also just connect with nature in a really real way.
So, Casey, do you have any books or websites that you recommend to people if they want to learn more about witches and what it means to be a witch and some of the tools that a witch uses?
Sure. I do have a ton of book ideas. For one, if you're interested in learning kind of about the history of witches, there's a great book called Caliban and the Witch by Sylvia Federici. That's going to be more about like the historical framework. And then there's so many books. There's the Witch's Bible, which is sort of like Celtic Gardnerian witchcraft, which can be a good foundation for folks. And then another really great classic is Starhawk's Spiral Dance, which is she's a more modern figure in the goddess and spirituality movement, which definitely applies to witchcraft in a lot of ways too.
Okay, cool. Thank you. I'll put that in the show notes so people can access it really easily.
Great.
If people want to receive a reading from you or connect with you or learn more about you, what's the best way they can do that?
Sure. Yeah. So you can follow me on Instagram. I'm at Wanderers Tarot. And my website is wandererstarot.com. And on my website, you'll find links to book readings with me, as well as you can find all my decks and books for sale there as well. If I might add, also, you can follow at Witches Confluence, which is the Modern Witches Confluence's Instagram. And we're hosting a lot of smaller gatherings throughout the year for witches and witch-curious folks to connect and do ritual and play together.
Oh, that's awesome. I didn't know you were doing that. Thank you so much for joining us and for sharing all your knowledge on witches and what it means to be a modern day witch.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was really fun.
Boo, 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 boo. Thanks so much for tuning in, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this episode with Casey Zabala. And if you did, we've created a little bonus episode about tarot cards and intuition, especially for my Patreon supporters. So if you are interested in hearing that episode and becoming a patron for just $1 a month and supporting the podcast in that way, just head on over to patreon.com/rainbowsarecircles. I also wanted to let you know that I created a few yoga videos. They're 15-minute practices that you can do every day or a few times a week just to kind of get your body moving, to connect with your breath, to maybe break up some tension in your shoulders and your neck, get some flexibility in the spine. If you're interested in practicing yoga with me and meditation, just go to my YouTube channel, which is called Rainbows Are Circles. Thanks so much, everyone, and I hope you're doing well. I hope you're staying safe and healthy during this quarantine and that you are using this time in a way that feels really nourishing and fulfilling and helpful and beautiful for you. Until next time, have a magical day. Bam, 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 bam. Wow, 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 wow. Rainbows are circles.